The change did not happen all at once, but it began immediately. Throughout the Dominion fleet, alien soldiers were experiencing emotions they had never felt before. Wonder replaced anger. Curiosity replaced fear. Joy replaced the endless hunger for conquest that had driven them across the galaxy. Admiral Vex Korath stood slowly from his command chair, his 4 eyes still locked on Katie Walsh's gentle face. For 1,000,000 years, he had been the most feared being in 17 galaxies. He had personally ordered the destruction of thousands of worlds. Yet this human child looked at him with complete acceptance and understanding. "I don't understand," Vex Korath said, his voice breaking with emotion. "How can you forgive what cannot be forgiven? How can you show kindness to someone who has caused so much suffering?" Katie smiled and took his massive scaled hand in her small human one. "Because forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It's about choosing to create a better future. Every moment is a chance to become someone new. Even you, Admiral. Especially you." The Admiral felt something he had not experienced in countless eons. Hope. Not hope for victory or conquest, but hope for redemption. Hope that even someone like him could learn to be better. On Earth, President Helen Martinez was coordinating the most complex diplomatic operation in galactic history. But instead of using traditional negotiations or treaties, she was facilitating direct mind-to-mind connections between humans and Dominion forces. Understanding was flowing both ways, creating bonds deeper than any political alliance. Dr. Paul Bennett was working with Dominion historians, sharing Earth's records of how humanity had evolved from violence to peace. The alien scholars were amazed to learn that humans had once been just as warlike as the Dominion. The transformation they were witnessing was not impossible magic, but the result of thousands of years of conscious choice and effort. "Your species fought wars for millions of years," Dr. Bennett explained to Commander Rex Stahl. "So did ours. The difference is that we decided to stop. We chose to evolve beyond our violent instincts instead of celebrating them." Rex Stahl looked at the historical records with growing amazement. Ancient human battles were just as brutal and destructive as anything in the Dominion's military history. Yet somehow, these same creatures had learned to transcend their nature completely. "How long did it take?" Rex Stahl asked. "How long before you stopped wanting to fight?" "Generations," Paul admitted. "The first step was the hardest. We had to admit that our old way of thinking was not working. We had to be willing to try something completely different, even though it seemed impossible." Meanwhile, engineer Tony Brooks was leading the most remarkable construction project in galactic history. Working with both human and alien crews, he was converting the Dominion's massive war fleet into something entirely new. Weapons became medical devices. Military computers became educational systems. Warships became hospitals and schools, and research stations. The aliens watched in wonder as their tools of destruction transformed into instruments of healing and creation. Many of them wept as they realized how much good they could have done with these resources, instead of using them to cause harm. Captain Steve Rodriguez finally got his first contact mission, but not the way he had imagined. His ship Unity became the flagship of a combined human Dominion fleet that was traveling to worlds the Dominion had conquered. Their mission was not to fight new battles, but to heal old wounds and free enslaved populations. Dr. Carol Thompson worked around the clock to establish communication with species throughout the galaxy. Word was spreading that the unstoppable Dominion of Zephyr had not just been defeated, but had been transformed into liberators and healers. Fear was turning into hope on 1,000 different worlds. The most profound changes were happening to individual Dominion soldiers. Beings who had known only military discipline, their entire lives were discovering personal freedom for the first time. They were learning that they could choose their own paths, follow their own interests, and create their own meaning instead of simply following orders. Commander Zarbeth had become one of the most enthusiastic converts. She was working with Dr. Amy Walsh to develop new technologies that combined alien engineering with human consciousness techniques. Together, they were creating devices that could heal not just physical injuries, but psychological and spiritual trauma as well. I spent my entire life believing that strength came from the ability to destroy, Zarbeth explained to a group of mixed human and alien researchers. Now I understand that true strength comes from the ability to create, to heal, to build something better than what existed before. Ben Walsh's vertical farms had become symbols of the new galactic civilization. Beings from dozens of different species came to New Geneva to learn about sustainable agriculture and cooperative living. His crops now fed not just humans, but refugees from worlds devastated by the Dominion's former campaigns of conquest. Food tastes better when it's grown with love and shared freely, Ben told his diverse group of students. Everything is better when it's done with love. Admiral Vex Korath had undergone perhaps the most dramatic transformation of all. The being who had once commanded the destruction of entire civilizations now spent his days working directly with survivors of Dominion attacks. He helped them heal their trauma, rebuild their societies, and learn to trust again. It was difficult work. Many survivors could not believe that their former tormentor had genuinely changed. But Vex Korath persisted, driven by a deep need to make amends for his past actions. Slowly, patiently, he proved through his actions that redemption was real. Young Katie Walsh had become something of a celebrity throughout the galaxy. The story of how a university student had touched the heart of the galaxy's most feared admiral had spread to every inhabited world. But Katie remained humble, continuing her studies and helping other young beings learn about the power of compassion. The ripple effects of humanity's gift continued to spread. Species that had hidden from the Dominion for centuries began to emerge from their hiding places. Civilizations that had been enslaved for millennia experienced freedom for the first time. The galaxy was transforming from a place of fear and suffering into something beautiful and hopeful. Dr. Rebecca Stone established teaching centers on hundreds of worlds, sharing the meditation and consciousness techniques that had made humanity's evolution possible. The methods had to be adapted for different species, but the basic principles worked for any form of intelligent life. Consciousness is the one thing all intelligent beings share, Rebecca explained to her diverse classes. Once you understand that you are connected to everything else in the universe, violence becomes as impossible as hurting yourself. Not every member of the Dominion transformed immediately. Some chose to leave rather than change their ways. But they found that the galaxy was no longer welcoming to conquerors and destroyers. More and more species were learning humanity's techniques and becoming immune to traditional military force. As the years passed, the former Dominion fleet became the foundation of a new kind of galactic civilization. Instead of an empire built on fear and conquest, it was a cooperative network based on mutual aid and shared knowledge. Planets that had once been military targets became centers of learning and culture. President Helen Martinez often looked back on the day the aliens arrived with wonder and gratitude. Humanity's 3,000 years of peace had prepared them not to fight monsters, but to show monsters how to become heroes. The smile they had worn when facing annihilation had not been naive optimism, but the quiet confidence of beings who had already transcended every form of destruction their enemies could imagine. The galaxy entered a new age of peace and cooperation. But humanity knew that their work was not finished. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other aggressive species were detecting the expanding sphere of transformation. They would come with their own weapons and their own certainty that violence was the answer to every problem. And when they arrived, humanity would be ready to greet them with the same patient smile. The same gentle understanding and the same transformative love that had turned the Dominion's greatest admiral into the galaxy's most dedicated teacher of peace, the Age. President Helen Martinez stood in the Global Council chamber, but her voice reached every human world and every Dominion ship simultaneously. She did not use radio or computers. Her words simply appeared in the minds of everyone who needed to hear them, translated perfectly into their native language. "My fellow humans and our new Dominion friends," Helen began, "the time has come to share the truth about what humanity has become during our 3,000 years of peace." Admiral Vex Korath listened from his flagship, still sitting across from young Katie Walsh. The human student continued to regard him with that impossible combination of understanding and compassion. He found himself hanging on every word the human leader spoke. 3,000 years ago, Helen continued, humanity made a choice. We could have continued the path of war and conquest that had defined our species for millions of years. Instead, we chose to evolve beyond the need for violence. But evolution takes time, and it requires practice. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison nodded as he watched more humans appearing throughout the Dominion fleet. Each appearance caused confusion among the aliens, but also a strange sense of calm. The humans radiated something that the Dominion's advanced sensors could detect but not measure. We discovered that consciousness is not limited by physical laws, Helen explained. When enough minds work together in perfect harmony, they can transcend the boundaries of matter and energy. We spent 3 millennia learning to think as one species, to feel as one heart, to exist as one consciousness that chooses to experience itself through billions of individual perspectives. Dr. Paul Bennett appeared on the bridge of a Dominion destroyer. The alien crew watched in amazement as he walked through their tactical displays, his body passing through solid matter like it was empty air. He smiled at their confusion and began to explain. Your weapons cannot harm us because we exist at a level of reality where harm is impossible, Paul told them. We are still physical beings, but we have learned to shift between different states of existence at will. When we choose to be solid, we are solid. When we choose to be energy, we are energy. When we choose to be pure consciousness, your weapons pass right through us. The Dominion soldiers stared at him in disbelief. One brave warrior tried to grab Paul's arm, but his hand passed right through it. Then Paul solidified himself and gently took the warrior's hand in his own. The alien jerked back in shock, not from pain, but from the overwhelming sense of peace that flowed from Paul's touch. Throughout the fleet, more humans were demonstrating abilities that seemed impossible. Engineer Tony Brooks was simultaneously appearing on dozens of ships, showing alien technicians how to convert their weapons into tools of creation. His consciousness was somehow in many places at once, fully present and aware in each location. Dr. Carol Thompson was doing something even more remarkable. She was directly connecting the minds of human and alien individuals, allowing them to share thoughts and emotions without words. Dominion soldiers who had known only hatred and fear their entire lives suddenly experienced love, joy, and genuine happiness for the first time. On Earth, Dr. Rebecca Stone continued to guide the global meditation. The energy radiating from humanity was now strong enough to affect matter at the quantum level. Flowers began blooming out of season. Old trees grew new leaves. Even the stars seemed to shine brighter in response to the collective human consciousness. We detected your approach centuries ago, Helen revealed to the Dominion forces. We could have prepared weapons to fight you. We could have fled to other dimensions where you could not follow. Instead, we chose the harder path. We decided to become something that could heal you instead of hurt you. Admiral Vex Korath finally found his voice. Impossible, he whispered. No species can evolve beyond the laws of physics. No consciousness can exist without a physical brain to contain it. Katie Walsh reached out and gently touched his scaled hand. Suddenly, Vex Korith could feel what she felt. He experienced her. Memories of growing up in a world without violence, her genuine excitement about meeting aliens, her complete lack of fear or hatred toward him, despite knowing about his terrible past. Your science is based on the assumption that consciousness is produced by matter, Katie explained. But what if it's the other way around? What if consciousness is the fundamental force of the universe, and matter is just one of the ways it expresses itself? Dr. Amy Walsh appeared beside her daughter, adding her expertise as a consciousness researcher. We've learned that individual minds are like drops of water in an ocean of universal consciousness. When we stop fighting the ocean and learn to flow with it, we gain access to abilities that seem impossible from a purely physical perspective. The evidence was all around them. Humans were demonstrating telepathy, teleportation, matter manipulation, and dozens of other abilities that violated everything the Dominion knew about science. But these were not superpowers in the traditional sense. They were natural expressions of consciousness that had evolved beyond physical limitations. Ben Walsh materialized in the Dominion supply centers, surrounded by mountains of weapons and military equipment. But instead of destroying these tools of war, he began transforming them. His touch converted plasma rifles into devices that could heal genetic damage. Antimatter bombs became power sources that could provide clean energy for centuries. We are not trying to conquer you or control you, Ben explained to the confused alien supply officers. We are trying to show you that there is another way to exist. A way based on cooperation instead of domination, on creation instead of destruction, on love instead of fear. The transformation was spreading through the Dominion fleet like a beneficial virus. Alien soldiers who had never questioned orders began to think for themselves. Warriors who had known only violence began to experience compassion. Beings who had spent their lives taking from others discovered the joy of giving. Commander Zarbeth found herself crying for the first time in her adult life. She was sitting with Dr. Lisa Carter, experiencing memories of Earth's peaceful cities and happy families. The concept of a world without war seemed like a beautiful dream, but she could feel that it was real. Why? Zarbeth asked. Why would you share this with us? We came here to destroy you. We have hurt so many others across the galaxy. Why do you treat us with kindness? Lisa smiled gently. Because kindness is who we are now. We have learned that the only way to truly defeat an enemy is to turn them into a friend. The only way to stop violence is to heal the pain that causes it. The only way to create lasting peace is to show others that peace is possible. President Helen Martinez prepared to make the final revelation. My Dominion friends, humanity extends an invitation to you. You can continue your path of conquest and destruction, but you will find that more and more species are learning what we have learned. The age of violence is ending across the galaxy. She paused, letting her words sink in. Or you can join us in building something beautiful, a galactic civilization based on cooperation, creativity, and conscious evolution. The choice is yours, but know that whatever you decide, we will respond with love and understanding. Admiral Vex Korith looked around his bridge at the humans who had appeared there. They were not conquerors or invaders. They were teachers, offering to share the most precious gift imaginable, the knowledge of how to live without fear, anger, or hatred. For the first time in 1,000,000 years, the Dominion of Zephyr faced a choice that their tactical computers could not calculate and their military doctrine could not address. They could continue to be what they had always been, or they could learn to become something entirely new. The Dominion's first attack lit up the space around Luna Station like a miniature sun. Plasma cannons that could melt asteroids fired their deadly beams. Antimatter bombs that could crack planets exploded with terrible force. The weapons struck, their targets with perfect accuracy, creating explosions bright enough to see from Earth. But then something impossible happened. The explosions passed right through Luna Station, like light passing through glass. The deadly energy beams went around the human structures as if they were not really there. The space station remained completely undamaged, floating peacefully in space as if nothing had happened at all. Jake Morrison stood at his window, watching the alien weapons fire harmlessly around him. He could see the confused faces of his crew members, but they were not afraid. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Jake pressed a button on his control panel and spoke calmly into his microphone. "Attention, Dominion Fleet. Welcome to our solar system. We hope you will join us for refreshments and cultural exchange once you have finished your weapons testing." On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Vex Korath stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. His sensors showed that every weapon had hit its target perfectly. The energy readings were exactly what they should be for a successful bombardment. But the human structures were completely undamaged. "Commander Zarbeth," Vex Korath called sharply, "explain these readings immediately." Zarbeth checked her instruments 3 times before answering. "Admiral, our weapons struck their targets with full force. But somehow, the humans appear to be unaffected. I don't understand how this is possible." Similar reports came in from across the Dominion fleet. Every ship had fired. Every weapon had hit its mark. But not a single human installation had been damaged. It was as if the humans existed in a different layer of reality where Dominion weapons simply could not touch them. On Earth, something even more remarkable was happening. Instead of hiding in emergency shelters, the human population was gathering in public spaces. They sat in large circles in parks, town squares, and open fields. Billions of people across hundreds of worlds joined together in perfect synchronization. Dr. Rebecca Stone led one of the largest gatherings in Central Park in Unity City. She sat in the center of a circle containing 10,000 people. Her voice was calm and gentle as she spoke. "Close your eyes, my friends. Feel the presence of our visitors. They come to us carrying great pain and fear. They have forgotten what peace feels like, but we can help them remember." Across human space, people followed Rebecca's guidance. They closed their eyes and began to focus their minds in the way they had been taught since childhood. Their breathing slowed and deepened. Their hearts began to beat in the same rhythm. A strange energy began to build, flowing from person to person like electricity through a circuit. The Dominion sensors detected this energy, but they could not understand what it was. It was not electromagnetic. It was not nuclear. It was not any form of power their science could identify. But it was growing stronger every second, radiating out from every human world like ripples on a pond. Admiral Vex Korath ordered increasingly powerful attacks. He activated weapons that had destroyed entire star systems, reality-warping bombs that could tear holes in space itself, dimensional cannons that fired pure destruction from other universes. The Dominion threw everything they had at the humans. Nothing worked. Every attack passed through human targets like they were made of light and air. The humans continued to sit peacefully in their circles, smiling softly as weapons designed to end civilizations flowed around them like gentle breezes. Then something happened that made even the fearless Dominion warriors step back in shock. Dr. Lisa Carter simply walked through the hull of the Dominion flagship and appeared on their bridge. She did not use a teleporter or a ship. She did not break through their shields or cut through their armor. She simply walked through solid metal as if it was empty space. The Dominion security systems could not detect her. Their weapons could not target her. Their sensors insisted that she was not really there, even though they could see her with their own eyes. Lisa smiled warmly at the confused aliens and found a comfortable chair to sit in. "Hello," she said in perfect Dominion language, though no human had ever heard their speech before. "I'm Dr. Lisa Carter from Earth. I've been looking forward to meeting you for my entire career. Would you mind if we had a little chat?" Vex Korath tried to draw his personal weapon, but his hand passed right through it. He tried to call for guards, but his voice made no sound. He tried to activate emergency systems, but the controls would not respond to his touch. It was as if he had suddenly become a ghost in his own ship. "Don't worry," Lisa said gently. "You're not in any danger. We would never hurt you. But we do need to talk about why you came here with weapons instead of gifts." Similar scenes were happening throughout the Dominion fleet. Humans were appearing on every ship, walking through walls and shields as if they were not there. They sat down peacefully among the confused alien crews and began to speak in voices that somehow made perfect sense despite the language barriers. The engineer Tony Brooks appeared in the Dominion engine rooms. He looked at their antimatter reactors with professional interest. "These are beautifully designed," he told the startled alien engineers, "but you're using them for destruction. Let me show you how the same technology can create unlimited clean energy for peaceful purposes." Dr. Carol Thompson materialized in the communication centers. She helped confused alien operators understand that their conquest databases contained no information about this situation, because no conquest database could contain information about what humanity had become. But the most profound moment happened when Katie Walsh, still just a university student, appeared directly in front of Admiral Vex Korath himself. She looked at this being who had destroyed countless worlds and killed trillions of innocent creatures. She saw the fear and confusion in his 4 eyes. And then she smiled. Katie did not speak. She did not need to. She simply looked at the Admiral with complete understanding and acceptance. For the first time in his million-year existence, Vex Korath felt what it meant to be truly seen by another being. Not feared, not hated, not even judged. Just understood. Tears began to flow from the Admiral's eyes as he felt an emotion he had never experienced before. It was peace, real peace. Not the peace of the grave or the peace of surrender, but the peace of being accepted exactly as he was, despite everything he had done. Throughout the Dominion fleet, alien soldiers began to lay down their weapons, not because they were forced to, but because the very idea of violence was starting to feel strange and unnecessary. The human presence was like a gentle virus, spreading from mind to mind, rewriting the basic assumptions about how the universe worked. On Earth, President Helen Martinez prepared to address both species simultaneously. The moment had come to reveal the truth that humanity had been preparing for during their 3,000 years of peace. The alien ships came out of hyperspace like thunder in the darkness. They were massive, each one bigger than Earth's largest cities. The ships arranged themselves in perfect military formation around the solar system. They moved with the precision of a well-trained army that had done this many times before. Admiral Vex Korath stood on the command bridge of the flagship. He was tall and covered in dark scales that reflected the light from the control panels. His 4 eyes studied the tactical displays with cold intelligence. Behind him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations, preparing for another conquest. The Dominion of Zephyr had been conquering galaxies for 1,000,000 years. They had destroyed civilizations, enslaved entire species, and taken resources from countless worlds. To them, this was simply how the universe worked. The strong took from the weak. Fear was a tool. Violence was the answer to every problem. Vex Korath looked at the sensor readings from the human solar system. What he saw confused him. The humans had no battle fleets waiting for them, no defense stations with powerful weapons, no military bases preparing for war. Instead, the humans were broadcasting welcome messages and preparing gift packages. Commander Zarbeth, Vex Korath, called to his second-in-command. "Are you certain these readings are correct?" Zarbeth checked her instruments. Again, "Yes, Admiral." The humans show no signs of military preparation. Their ships are not armed for battle. Their space stations are civilian research facilities. They appear to be welcoming us. Other Dominion officers laughed at this news. They had conquered species that begged for mercy, species that tried to hide, species that fought desperately with primitive weapons. But they had never encountered a species that actually wanted to meet them. "Perhaps they are too primitive to understand danger," suggested Commander Rex Tal from his weapons station. "Or perhaps this is an elaborate trap." Vex Korath studied the human transmissions more carefully. The messages were simple and friendly. The humans were excited about first contact. They wanted to learn about Dominion culture and share their own. They offered food, art, music, and knowledge as gifts. On Earth, the news of the alien arrival spread quickly. But instead of panic, there was celebration. After 3,000 years of wondering, humanity finally had proof that they were not alone in the universe. People gathered in public spaces to watch the alien ships on their screens and discuss what this meant for the future. President Helen Martinez called an emergency meeting of the Global Council. The council members arrived quickly, but their faces showed curiosity rather than fear. They had been preparing for this moment for generations. "The alien fleet is larger than we expected," Helen said as she showed the tactical display. "But their presence here represents the fulfillment of humanity's greatest dream. We are about to become part of a larger galactic community." Dr. Paul Bennett stood to address the council. "I have studied the historical records of how first contact situations typically develop. Based on the aliens' military formation and approach, they may not come in peace. However, I believe we are ready for any situation." The other council members nodded. They had discussed this possibility many times over the centuries. Not all alien species would necessarily be peaceful like humans had become. Some might still be driven by the old emotions that humans had left behind long ago. General Frank Miller had been quiet during the meeting. He was responsible for Earth's ancient military systems, though no one had expected to need them. Now, he spoke carefully. "I recommend that we activate certain protocols that have been dormant for 3 millennia. Not for attack, but for other purposes." The council members exchanged meaningful looks. They knew what Frank was referring to. Though it had never been tested in a real situation. Dr. Nancy Davis, Earth's leading philosopher, addressed the group. "We must remember that our strength has never been in weapons or military tactics. Our greatest achievement is our evolution beyond the need for violence. Whatever these aliens intend, we will respond with the wisdom we have gained through 3,000 years of peace." Meanwhile, Captain Steve Rodriguez was preparing his ship Unity for a diplomatic mission. His crew was excited, but nervous. They had trained for first contact, but this was much bigger than they had imagined. The alien fleet could easily destroy every human ship if they wanted to. Dr. Carol Thompson worked frantically to analyze the alien communications. Their language was completely different from anything in her databases, but she noticed something interesting. The alien messages were all military orders and tactical reports. They were not trying to communicate with humanity at all. "Captain Rodriguez," Carol said over the communication system, "I don't think these aliens are here for diplomacy. Their communications suggest they are preparing for military action." Steve felt a chill run down his spine. But then he remembered his training. Humanity had faced challenges before and overcome them through wisdom and understanding. "Continue monitoring their transmissions, Dr. Thompson, but prepare the welcome packages anyway. Sometimes the best way to prevent a fight is to offer friendship first." Back on the Dominion flagship, Admiral Vex Korath made his decision. The humans were either incredibly naive or dangerously clever. Either way, they needed to be shown the reality of their situation. The Dominion had a reputation to maintain. If word spread that they had been welcomed rather than feared, other species might get ideas about resistance. "All ships prepare for initial bombardment," Vex Korath ordered. "We will target their lunar installations first." A demonstration of power should clarify the situation quickly. The Dominion weapons systems came online with a sound like distant thunder. Across the fleet, thousands of plasma cannons and antimatter. Bombs prepared to fire. The aliens had done this so many times that it was routine for them. On Luna Station, Jake Morrison watched the alien ships with interest. His sensors were detecting massive energy buildups in the alien weapon systems. Any other species would have been terrified. But Jake simply smiled and activated certain systems that had been waiting patiently for 3,000 years. "Attention all human colonies and ships," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "Our visitors appear to have some misunderstandings about our intentions. It's time to show them what we've learned during our long peace." Across human space, people heard the message and nodded. They had always known this day might come. They had spent 3 millennia preparing for it, though not in the way their ancestors might have expected. Instead of building bigger weapons, they had built something far more powerful. The first alien attack began with the fury of a dying star. But humanity just smiled and waited to show their visitors something truly amazing. Jake Morrison stood at the big window of Luna Station and looked out at the stars. He had been doing this same job for 20 years now. His job was to watch for danger coming to Earth. But in all those 20 years, nothing bad had ever happened. His father did the same job before him, his grandfather too. None of them ever saw any real danger. The year was 5024. Earth had been peaceful for 3,000 years. No wars, no fights between countries, no violence at all. People found this hard to believe when they read about it in history books. How could humans have ever hurt each other? It seemed impossible now. Jake walked to his control desk and checked the screens. All green lights. All systems working perfectly. The defense weapons were still there, but they were like old museum pieces now. Nobody remembered how to use them properly. They kept them working because it was tradition, not because they expected to need them. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Carter was studying alien life in her laboratory. She had spent her whole career learning about creatures that might exist on other planets. But humanity had never actually met any aliens. They had been looking for 3,000 years. They had traveled to many star systems. They had built colonies on dozens of worlds. But they had never found another intelligent species. Lisa often wondered what aliens might be like. Would they be friendly? Would they want to trade? Would they share knowledge? She had written hundreds of papers about these questions. Other scientists read her work and wrote their own papers. It was all theoretical. They were just guessing. Ben Walsh was working in his vertical farm on the colony world of New Geneva. The tall growing towers stretched up toward the sky, filled with plants that would feed millions of people. Ben loved his work. Growing food felt important and peaceful. His wife Amy was a scientist who studied how human minds worked. She spent her days trying to understand consciousness and human potential. Their daughter, Katie, was at university on Earth. She was studying human history, especially the old wars. Katie found it fascinating that humans used to fight and kill each other. She read about ancient battles and wondered how people could have been so angry and violent. It was like reading about a completely different species. The peace had changed humanity in amazing ways. Without wars to fight or enemies to fear, humans had learned to do incredible things with their minds. They could meditate for hours and feel completely calm. They could sense each other's emotions. Some could even share thoughts without speaking. Crime had almost disappeared, not because of strict laws, but because people simply did not want to hurt others anymore. Cities were beautiful now. Instead of walls and weapons, they had gardens and art. Instead of soldiers, they had teachers and artists. Children grew up learning about cooperation and kindness. The idea of hitting someone or taking something that was not yours seemed as strange as breathing underwater. Dr. Carol Thompson worked as a language expert at the Global Communications Center. Her job was to prepare for the day when humans might meet aliens. She had created translation systems that could work with any possible language. She had studied every form of communication that humans had ever used. She was ready to talk to aliens if they ever showed up. Captain Steve Rodriguez commanded the exploration ship Unity. He and his crew traveled to distant star systems, always hoping to find signs of intelligent life. They had discovered many amazing things. Beautiful planets with strange plants and animals. Ancient ruins from civilizations that had died out long ago. But never any living aliens who could talk back to them. Steve often imagined what first contact would be like. He pictured himself shaking hands with an alien leader. He thought about the gifts they would exchange and the stories they would share. Humanity had prepared welcome packages for aliens, filled with art and music and information about Earth. They were ready to be good neighbors to anyone they might meet. President Helen Martinez led the Global Council from the capital city of Unity on Earth. The council had representatives from every human colony world. They made decisions together about trade, exploration, and research. But mostly, they just made sure everyone had what they needed to be happy and healthy. Government was simple when people were naturally good to each other. The Global Council met in a beautiful building surrounded by parks and fountains. There were no guards or weapons anywhere. The leaders could walk freely among the people without fear. Children often visited to ask questions about other worlds. Everyone was welcome. Dr. Paul Bennett was the keeper of human history. He spent his days in vast libraries, reading about the old times when humans fought wars. He understood better than anyone how much humanity had changed. The old humans had been driven by fear, anger, and greed. The new humans had learned to live without these destructive emotions. Paul often gave talks to students about the past. He explained how wars used to start and why people used to hate each other. The students listened with amazement. They could not understand how fear could make people do such terrible things. To them, fear was just an interesting emotion they had read about in books. On this particular day, something changed. The long-range sensors at Luna Station began detecting movement in the outer solar system. Jake Morrison looked at his screens and saw something that had never been there before. Ships, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And they were headed toward Earth. Jake felt excited rather than afraid. After 3,000 years, humanity was finally going to meet their neighbors among the stars. He smiled as he reached for his communication device to share the wonderful news with Earth.